Exciting with us in our blue. We look so cute.
Yeah.
Like matchy together. So welcome to Despina. I'm so excited to have you on board here talking today after having been a guest on your podcast. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited to be here. It was so much fun having you on my podcast. So yeah, thank you for asking me.
Yeah, it's so, I mean, you and I, we get along like a house on fire. So like it's I know it's so fun when we chat with each other. So I'm so excited. Yeah. So I have a bit of an intro, and so it's just Despina. You're like Madonna, right? There we just go with one word, Despina.
Yeah.
And I think
I'm related to her. Yeah, to Madonna. I've done my genealogy. Sorry to cut you off, but like, yeah, we're actually cousins. So
get out.
Yeah, like 9th generation or something like that. But anyways, continue with the intro.
Her mother's French Canadian, right?
Yeah. Oh, I think I told you the story.
No, I don't think you did. I think we talked a little bit about my mom's background is French Canadian as well, but you did tell me that your family did come over. Yeah, it's so fascinating. Yeah, that is so cool. Yeah. And how we're both like as Canadian as all will get out, but yeah.
Exactly.
Go Canada.
You off, but
no, it's good. It's just us girls having a good time. So I just wanted to make sure that I sort of go over, basically all the different hats that you wear, which are you're a Toronto realtor, which I know people say realtor, probably, right? They probably say.
Yeah.
Did you see that? I laugh because that was that one show that what's her name? Drew Barrymore is in, and they made that joke about the realtor. I guess a lot of people mispronounce that, but it's an odd word. So you're Toronto realtor, which hopefully we're going to talk a little bit about the real estate, the state of real estate in Canada and Toronto. But not only that, you're a public speaker. You have your own podcast called Connect and Bloom, which I was delighted to be a guest on. And you've got some really fascinating guests that you have interviewed on Connect and Bloom. Mm-hmm. You're a networking expert, which is what we're going to talk about today. And also, which was so, I was basically gobsmacked when we met because you're the co-founder of Lean In Canada, and you got to meet Sheryl Sandberg, which I think I told you one of the reasons why I wrote my book was because of Sheryl Sandberg. Just that empowering feeling of, if Sheryl Sandberg feels like she's got imposter syndrome, then what the hell kind of hope to the rest of us? So it's pretty cool that you got to meet her and start up Lean In Canada, which is such an empowering networking opportunity. And then we got thrown into COVID, and
it was such an amazing journey to start the whole organization. And I mean, that's where I learned how I love networking. I didn't realize what it was before that and all that. So it was an amazing journey to meet her and the whole
process. And go to her house. You got to go to her house.
Yes. So I mean, the way that kind of happened is they decided leanin.org, which is in California, they decided that they wanted to invite people from all over the world who had started these like small chapters. It just really happened randomly. People read the book, were so inspired, and they just decided to start these chapters. And we were reaching out to the people in California, and they were really surprised that people were reaching out and starting all these circles. So they decided to invite a bunch of us to California. And they had kind of like these sessions where they had speakers, and then they surprised us on the last day and they said, okay, we're going to Cheryl's house. And that was insane, and she's actually the nicest person. She's got an amazing house. This massive, we had dinner. I actually sat like right in front of her on her couch, and we just had like a casual conversation. And I gotta say, when I spoke to her one-on-one, I was just like, oh, you're great. Like I was speechless. Like I was like nonsense, but I think that's what happens when you meet somebody that you find so amazing. And for those people who don't know who Sheryl Sandberg is, she's the CEO of Facebook. She wrote the book Lean In, which is a bestseller, and it really inspired this I would say almost the resurgence of the women's movement, right? Because it kind of went dormant there for a while. It goes in phases, and yeah, I think I would credit her with, um, starting that. I don't know if you want me to talk about how I started Lean In Canada, because that's a networking story in itself.
Absolutely.
So basically what happened is I read the book. I saw her on 60 Minutes. I had no idea who she was at that point. And she was talking about her book and, like, women's leadership and all that. And I was just like, I need to buy this book. So I read it, was so inspired. And then I went on LinkedIn to see if there was kind of any groups or anything like that. And there wasn't. But this woman by the name of Christina, she actually posted the same thing that I was looking for. Like, are there any groups? And if not, I'd love to start one. So I messaged her and I was like, hey, why don't you have it at my office? Because at that point, I actually owned a digital marketing agency, which is at Bay and Dundas, downtown Toronto. And so, that happened. And like about 30 random women from LinkedIn showed up at my office. So it was crazy, not expecting this to happen. And we just kind of went around in circles talking about women's leadership and stuff like that. And we kind of continued. We did not plan to start Lean In Canada. But we realized at that point there was really a need, because there wasn't a lot of women's organizations back then. I mean, there was WXN, Women of Influence was around, but they weren't as influential as they were now. I mean, now there's like a ton of women's groups, right? But back then there wasn't. So there was obviously a need to start something. And so yeah, we just started having more meetings in my office, and it just kept growing. And, we eventually realized we needed to have speakers, like influential speakers. Just kept growing and growing and growing, and then we could no longer fit everybody in my office. So we actually just, another networking story, through networking, we got a donation from Procter and Gamble for $50,000, which allowed us to actually move to the Spoke Club, which is a private club in Toronto. And so from then on, we had events, and met amazing people. It was an amazing experience. And now we're at 8,000 women across Canada. And it was just through like a LinkedIn post. This all happened.
Crazy.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. I mean, I have this PowerPoint presentation, but the history of how everything started, and that's like the screenshot of that LinkedIn post that Christina had posted, because it's really where everything started. And people don't realize the value of LinkedIn. I'm sure we'll get into that, but that was like 8,000 women. Like, how's that? How's that happen? So
No, and you're even for probably non-members. I've been even as a non-member, been to some of the events, and it's like before COVID, it was like hundreds of people were showing up
yeah,
to those events. So
yeah,
yes. And I think it's so great to have that inclusive environment where we all feel comfortable sort of talking about that imposter syndrome, if you will. I think that is really, for me, I found that her vulnerability when she talked about having imposter syndrome, and as you said, this is one of the arguably the largest organization having, Facebook has over, I think, almost 3 billion. It's at least 2.5 billion people in the world are on Facebook now. And so her role is certainly like it's a significant one, and she's Ivy League educated and so forth. And for her to feel like she has imposter syndrome, for her to feel like she doesn't want to sit at the table, was like,
hmm
oh my gosh, like that's just incredible for for the rest of us who also feel that vulnerability and just haven't raised our hand to sort of say like me too, right? I'm
yeah.
feeling the same way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's what made it so relatable, because it was the first time that I ever heard anybody talk about imposter syndrome. Because I was always like, oh, everybody's going to figure out, like, I was a graphic designer at that point, and I was like, everybody's going to figure out that I actually really suck. Even though I won all these like graphic design awards, I fooled everybody. Like,
Yeah.
but it's not true. Like, and it's interesting.
I
Like
thought
you
it
said,
was specifically to females too. I mean, I remember when I started up my business like 10 years ago, I thought that it was a female thing, and I thought it was a Canadian thing because we Canadians have been raised to be humble and not bragging. And of course, I always say, like, if we bump into the chair, we apologize to the chair. But then I've realized it's a worldwide thing, and it's not just for specific sexes. That it's like American men that I know, or people from the, like all over the world, all nod in agreement that universally we almost all, I think there's probably only been 2 clients that I've ever had who've been like, no, 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 like, you need to tell everybody that I am amazing at what I do. And I'm like, all right, let's go full out. But very few people really want to stand in their accomplishments for fear of what if someone says something like, or what if someone's going to say, who do you think you are? So we just really haven't been raised in an environment to own the value that we bring. And yet now here in 2021, it's all like, be a personal brand, stand out, be different, be unique, be remarkable, own it. Yeah, it just doesn't work. It's just not an overnight transformation where people feel comfortable. I mean, even doing this, like talking on camera is it's a fear for so many people too. Talking on camera, talking in front of crowds and stuff. You and I love it though.
No, it's fun. It's definitely fun. But yeah, even right before, you still get nervous. I think no matter how polished you are or whatever, you still get that feeling like, oh my God, like.
And every time I go, oh, like afterwards, oh, like it sucked. It was terrible. Like every single time I do a presentation, it's always this like, beat myself up after the fact. And it's interesting. And the one thing that I say over and over again is like, when we're inside the jar, we can't see the label. So we never see ourselves the way that other people see us. And the little lizard or little monkey in our brain or squirrel or whatever kind of metaphor you want to describe is always like, you're not enough.
Yeah.
But other people see us as see us as like, oh gosh, you're terrific. I love what you do. If I could only be like you. I remember I was asked at a networking event. I was asked, I think I had just was in the process of going through my divorce, and I was doing speaking, and I was on the stage, and some woman came up and she was just like, how are you doing it all? And I'm like, woman, my life is a mess right now. Yeah, I'm really holding on right now. And it's just so interesting that I guess she just saw me as polished and put together. And I was like, oh, I feel like I feel like the opposite of that right now. But yeah, so
I've been there too. Yeah, I've seen people, they've come up to me and they know who I am. I'm like, how do you know me? And then they're like, I know that you did this and this. And I'm like, really? Like, wow. And it makes you feel great, but it makes you realize that people see you differently than you see yourself, right? And I'm not to say that I'm walking around, and same thing with you. We're not constantly walking around with this sense of insecurity, but it happens, like and it happens for everybody.
And it happens, I think, even so, the pendulum swings from one way to another, where there's days when I'm like, I've got this. And it's those days that I have gone on to write my book, or to go on TV or things like those are the days when I'm like, I got it. Oh, my friend Amy Riddell says hello. Amy, so we're talking about networking, and Amy runs a conference, and a lot of people I talk with, her conferences are the oh gosh, Amy, you'll have to type in, it's APC is the acronym. So it's Administrative Professionals Conference and Project World Conference, all over Canada and US. So yeah, so she's another person that certainly talks about networking, and she has to hire speakers and too. So anyway, I'm babbling now, but like obviously networking has been a big part of your career, which Leaning Canada and all these other things that you're doing. So like, what excites you about connecting people to each other?
There's this thing called like the connectors high. And I don't know if I invented that or if
I haven't seen it. So yeah, it sounds good to me.
Yeah. So basically, when you see something form out of a connection that you make, there's something about it that just gets you so excited. I mean, I know that happened to me with you. So we were at a conference. Yes, we were at a conference, and I was speaking, I was moderating one of the talks, and I had introduced you to a woman from another women's organization. And I think like at that night, so many people, when you're a speaker, I'm sure you've experienced this, they come up and talk to you and you just can't really focus on somebody, right? So I had introduced the two of you, And, that was kind of it. Didn't hear anything. And then I saw a post on LinkedIn that you had written an article for them. And I reached out to you and I was like, is that because of the connection that I made? And you were like, yes, that's exactly it. Right. And you're just like, oh, yay. Like, you know what I mean? When you see somebody, something grow out of something that you connect, it just makes you feel good, right? And I think it gives you so much energy because I think as the founder of Lean in Canada, you want to see women succeed, right? Like that's really important to support other people. So I think that's what really excites me. But what I also like about it is, I like meeting people because I think you're the same way. Like you can get energy from other people, right? So when you're staying at home, like it gets you out of the house, you get to meet people, and things happen, and you talk to people, and you learn so much. You might meet people that are not necessarily in your neighborhood, and you get completely different perspectives, right? So and I also love seeing what develops. You've met somebody maybe years ago, and then, you reconnect, and then things have happened throughout the years. And, I just love that. It just gives me such a great sense of, um, just warm and fuzzy.
Yeah, and I mean, I think you and I are probably the same, cut from the same cloth, where we're probably both lean on the side of being extroverted. And yet at the same time, and I maybe you feel the same way, I don't know, is that sometimes I'm like, oh, I don't want to go to a network. Like I don't like it before I go. I'm always like, why did I agree to do this? And then I get there and I'm the last person to leave because invariably I want to talk to everybody. But yeah, I think it's weird because I think even so introverts kind of like look at somebody like you and I and go like, how it's just so foreign to them. But I struggle especially if I don't know anybody that I'm walking into. And that one event that you were moderating, I didn't know anybody, so I was so excited to see you because I'm like, oh. And then yeah, you introduced me to someone and moved on, and yeah, and things sort of work out. So yeah, after I get over that initial sort of like, oh, why am I here, it certainly is beneficial afterwards. But I share that because there's other maybe introverts that are like, oh, events are like the worst things ever. But I don't even think extroverts struggle with them sometimes.
Oh, I totally struggle. I have to say, I think I am an introvert and I'm an extrovert. Like I think it depends on the situations. Like there are times that I feel the exact same way. I'm like, oh, I don't want to go out. Like I just like I'm in my like lounge outfit right now, and it's just I feel good, right? But I find, I don't know if you found this, but like when I've pushed myself, that's where I've met such amazing people, right? I can tell you about a situation. I almost left an event, and had I left this event, it would have been one of the worst things ever because and this is when I was like really kind of nervous about networking. I wasn't so sure. So I had made this deal with my coach that I was going to go to this event and I was going to meet two people or three, I can't remember, and get their business cards. And I was going to show her that, I met these people. And so after the event, I almost left. I almost like walked out the door, and I was going to explain to her like people weren't really social and all that kind of stuff. But I decided to stay, because I really wanted to leave, but whatever. So I hung out by the food table, and eventually this woman came up to me, and she started, talking to me, and she was kind of like you, like we just got along so well. It was great, right? And we talked about all these funny things that we did in our past, and anyways, and she was from Montreal, and I never thought anything was going to come out of this networking event that I met with her. I just thought she was really a nice person from Montreal. And anyways, funny story, like about a year later, I had started Lean In, and I saw in my inbox that she had registered for one of our events. And this is when it was a lot smaller. And so I reached out and I was like, hey, Maureen, remember me? And she was like, yeah, I just got recruited to Toronto. And I was like, that's awesome. Anyway, so she didn't make it out to the event, but I reached out and I was like, let's go for dinner. So we met for dinner, and just out of, we just continued the conversation, and eventually, things got, we lost touch again. And then out of the blue, she calls me and she's like, Despina, my client wants to donate some money to a women's organization. And she was like, I immediately thought of you. And it was $50,000 and it was Procter and Gamble, that story I was telling you about before. So I know when people say like, I want to leave a room and I don't really want to be there because I've been there. But had I left that room that day, I would not have gotten that money.
Wow.
And who knows how many people have told me that lean in has impacted their lives and affected the lives of other people. So I can't imagine had I left that room that day, what would have happened, the changes that have led to that donation and stuff like that, because eventually we were able to provide tickets at a reduced rate and stuff like that just because of that donation. So yeah, I know people feel really nervous, but it's really important to go, you know?
Yeah, I think it's so good for you and I, people like us, to share, because that
Yeah.
initial nervousness that we all have, like, I don't know anybody, and like, and then having to immerse yourself where there's other conversations going on, and we're all, and it sucks for everybody. It's not just for the introverts that go, I really don't want to be here at all. We all universally feel that way. And then sometimes there are those serendipitous moments that happen, that it's like amazing that you did stick around for whatever reason, that then it's like, if I hadn't stuck around, if I hadn't, as you were telling that story, I remember the very first times that I was even networking with my local chamber of commerce, and everybody had to go around the room and stand up and introduce themselves.
Oh my
I
God.
remember like having my cup of like coffee, and I was like thinking like, like freaking out. And now it's like I do public speaking for a living, but just that initial thing, I was like, why am I freaking out? And yet any public speaker knows Amy, and I'm going to assume the LinkedIn user is usually my friend AJ that's on there, also another speaker at conferences, is like, we're all still terrified every time we speak. So, I think just sharing our feelings of nervousness and trying to reframe that into excitement certainly is, it's certainly, I think, helpful for other people when so they don't feel they're alone. Hence the whole lean in thing. I think that just, I love sharing those kinds of stories. So,
Yeah.
how COVID's obviously, as a person who like thrives in a networking environment like yourself, COVID's obviously made a big impact on your almost your livelihood, because you're a public speaker as well, and with lean in and stuff like that. So have you had to pivot, or are you just sort of waiting it out?
Well, it's changed a ton because I used to really think of networking as going to events, but it's really made me like rethink everything. And I have to say, like at the beginning of the pandemic, I really was not um, networking. I don't know if you feel the same way, but I feel like for the first few months, everybody just kind of disappeared,
Well, on the covers, I was like, oh, like the world is coming to an
Exactly.
end. I felt, oh yeah, I think we all went into some kind of a depression. It was hard.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. But then I realized that, I do get my energy off people, so I need to really get out there. So I started searching for a few online networking events, and I gotta say, some were hit and miss. Like some of them were, they were obviously just trying to sell you something and not trying to connect. I did find one of them that I really connected with. It was called Elevate. It's a women's organization, and they're actually mostly in the US. I think they just have a chapter in Canada and a few, other countries as well. But they were all about real, like true connections. And the great thing about Elevate was that, anybody from around the world could join. So you could meet people from basically wherever, right? So I remember meeting somebody from Costa Rica, and she had a podcast. And this is when I was thinking of starting my podcast. And she was like, let me give you a bunch of tips and stuff like that. So we actually had like a Zoom call from Costa Rica. And I thought it really changed everything for me. You know what I mean? Like, I still want to go to in-person networking events, but I definitely still want to do the Zoom kind of event because, one of the benefits is that you kind of see everybody at the same time, right? Like, so there's like 8 people, whereas like when you're at a networking event, somebody's off to the side, you can't really see their reaction. Whereas now you see everybody at the same time. I mean, another benefit is like it costs less because you don't have to travel, you know. Um, it's not really like coffee meetings anymore, so you're not spending this money. Um, talking to people. And it's also made me realize that another way to network properly is through social media, right? Like just by engaging with people on social media. And I also did a lot of reaching out to people that are already in my network, whether it's Zoom, whether it's phone calls, just catching up. Because I think it's really important to continue that networking relationship and not just let it go. So I gave myself that, like month and a half, 2 months kind of thing where I didn't really do anything and I kind of isolated and then just got back in. And the first one I had, actually, I realized how much energy and how much happier it made me. So that's why I continued with it, because I was just like, I need this.
Yeah. So have you used, I mean, obviously LinkedIn is, I mean, I'm a big champion of that as you are. Are you using other channels to make new contacts? Like, have you used Clubhouse much? I was on Clubhouse for a little bit. I met a Forbes influencer that I haven't been able to interview her, but I have been on her podcast. And then like, so have you used Clubhouse? Are you using that? And then you also mentioned in a previous conversation about Bumble for Business. So I'm curious to know if you're using that.
Yeah, I mean, Clubhouse, I think, had its day. I don't know if you think that it's still if
Using it anymore?
no,
No.
I don't use it anymore. I mean, when it came out, everybody was in lockdown. So I think it made sense. Like it was almost addictive. Like I was just on it, like listening a lot to people. I even had my own weekly
Room.
room that I had where I interviewed people, and it was great. And I did meet a few people and I connected with them. But yeah, I don't think it's as powerful as some of the other ones. I mean, I didn't like the fact that you couldn't like connect to the LinkedIn, right? Like it was only through Instagram, which that didn't really work for me. Cause to me, like if you want to network and meet people, I mean, Clubhouse was more business focused as opposed to like teenagers. So I think they got that wrong. Um, you
And
know,
not being able to record it too. So unless you were live, there was no legacy of
yeah.
that conversation. And I think that to me was a little hard as well. So yeah. And I just kind of found it to be a little bit of an echo chamber of people saying the same things over and over again. So I just even deleted it from my phone like for a
Yeah.
month. So yeah.
I felt there was also some negativity out there too. So
Mhm.
I was like, I don't really want to take part of this stuff. So yeah, it was the Wild West and I didn't like it so much. So I still have it on my phone, but I don't use it. With regards to like Bumble, I have used it. This was pre-COVID. And I did meet some interesting people and we've kept in touch. Nothing's come out of it, but I mean it's not any different than any other social media site. It's just, like you share a lot of interest. I found a lot of the people wanted friendships, which was still
Mhm.
good, like it's there's nothing wrong with that. Um, so yeah, was it as successful as other platforms such as LinkedIn or Instagram or something like that? Maybe not, but I still think that it's worthwhile. I mean, it's on my list. I have a few apps that I want to check out once COVID's over, to reconnect with other people. I mean, there's another one called Shaper. That seems interesting, and there's another one. I think it's Lunch Club or something like that. It's another kind of site where you connect with people. It's kind of
I
like
think
Tinder
I've
for
heard of
business.
Lunch Club too. Yeah, it's kind of like, yeah. I wonder because and then there was that one that was like a chat roulette type of thing. I don't know if it's anything like that, but I don't know. He's 15 now. I think there's these where you just click and then you just end up partnering up with random people on the internet.
Oh, really? I've never
Yeah,
heard
but I think it's for the kids, and there's a lot of weirdos on there and
of
stuff.
that.
Certainly not business focused by any stretch of the imagination, but I wonder if that like the lunch club is sort of like that as well. So yeah. Yeah, it's I mean, it's interesting because it is still tough to sort of do these, and I think we're getting Zoom fatigue too. We're all sort of going like, okay, but there's definite pluses as you mentioned, like I'm not having to drive and park and pay, all these for different random meetups all over the place, but I do miss people desperately. So I'm sure like as my friend Amy those conferences that she was running around the world there. I know she's desperate to get back in front of
Yeah,
people face to face. So I think that'll be coming along soon. Hopefully, at least
yeah,
they said it's happened. It's happening here in Toronto. She's been to a few events in person. it's bizarre, isn't it? That now we've got this sort of like, oh, I've got this sort of like, feeling of like, I don't know, this is weird to be in front of people, but hopefully it won't be long lasting anxiety of being
Yeah.
around people. Yeah. So, what do you think are some of the biggest mistakes that people make when they're networking? Because obviously, there's for you and I, we see the opportunities in networking. So, what do you think are some of the biggest mistakes people make?
I have a few. So I'll share the shortest ones first. Like one is like, not following up when you meet people. I think that happens to me a lot. It probably happens to you too. You meet somebody in an event and then um in some cases, like I'll don't have a card or something like that. And I'm like, this is my information. Like, add me on LinkedIn, we'll talk, and nothing ever happens. And it's a disappointment. A lot of times it's younger people that you're looking to mentor or something like that. That happens. Um, People that maybe just hand out cards and actually not um, you know, try to introduce themselves or develop a relationship. I think that's the biggest one. Like they just talk about themselves and they don't actually try to really connect with people. I think that's a big one. One, I have a story, if I could share. One of the ones, a big one that I don't think anybody talks about, is actually unfollowing people on social media. I would say that is one. It's a big networking mistake because networking is all about supporting people and things like that, right? So um, when you unfollow people, you're kind of saying to them that I'm not supporting you. I'm not supporting your business. And I think people, specifically Instagram, people see this as I'm trying to gain my influence. I'm trying to look like I'm an influential person and things like that. And I think that's the wrong way to look at it. So this thing that happened to me once. Um, this person and I, we were following each other. I have no idea how we started following each other, but she messaged me, and we had a nice little conversation, and it was all good, and liking each other's posts. And then all of a sudden, she wrote this post about how she needed to cleanse the people she follows because you want to make sure that you follow your ideal client. And I was like, am I one of those people she unfollowed? So I looked and I was like, oh, okay, that's interesting. She doesn't really get the whole networking thing, how it's all about supporting each other. And even though that person might not be your ideal client, they might know, because I thought she had great content actually. I'm like, if anybody needed anything that she does, I would definitely refer her and things like that. Like that's what it's all about. It's about raising your awareness and stuff like that, right? So anyways, fast forward like 6 months later, and I get this email, and it's about someone who's like, I'm great at networking. I'd love to be on your podcast, blah, blah, blah. And I like looked at her website. I'm like, she sounds so familiar. And I realized it was the same person. So I'm sure she didn't realize that, she wrote this post about unfollowing people who were, not part of your ideal clients and stuff like that. And here she was wanting to be on my podcast and talking to me about how great she was at networking. And I just think that tells you so much about networking. You never know in the future where you're going to need that person's help. It's not about using people, like, understand, but it's about, supporting people and being generous and stuff like that. So I thought that was really interesting. I mean, it tells you, it just tells you a lot about networking and how things work, right?
Yeah. Oh, 100%. I think I do get that question a lot actually in training, is like, should I be disconnecting from people? And I will say yes, if it's somebody, say that, maybe early on you didn't know the etiquette and so you accepted everyone's connection
Right.
request. And so sure, if someone is like living outside of your, like I always say, like I'm not going to necessarily obtain business from a florist in Ireland, so randomly connecting with that person isn't necessarily going to help me from a professional standpoint. So strategically, I might not accept that connection request from someone if they don't personalize it. And I think that that's a crucial thing too, right? If someone were to say, hey, I noticed you're, on your profile that, Despina, and we're both connected, then yeah, absolutely, I'll accept someone's connection request. But just take the time to like personalize it and
Absolutely.
Your point, though, it's not necessarily, don't just connect with people in your network, because so many referrals, as I'm sure that happens with you, is
Yeah,
these
all
people,
the
I
time.
don't, they might even be loose connections that I didn't even have a conversation with.
That
Um,
happens all the time. Yeah, people that I never would have thought would have referred me to somebody, and that happens. It happens all the time. Yeah, so I agree. And it's not that I don't unfollow anybody, right? Because if somebody's got some kind of offensive post, or I just don't agree with what they're saying, absolutely, I will, unfollow you for sure. But I think you have to, if you're going to accept it, really think
think
about
about it. Yeah.
it. Yeah, because if you change your mind after, it could affect your brand.
Yeah,
That
there's not, it's funny that you say that, because so many people are afraid of disconnecting from people, and yet most, because LinkedIn and some of these other channels don't actually notify the
yeah.
recipient. So you just were very, first of all, she announced it. Had she done it quietly, maybe you wouldn't have noticed, right?
I
Because
wouldn't
most
have
people,
noticed.
right,
Exactly.
wouldn't have known. So yeah, I think that was a little foolish of her to sort of say, oh, by the way, I'm going to disconnect from lots of people. And first of all, you're not, I'm voting you off the island, basically. And you're like, well, wait a minute, am I not enough? Right. So yeah, it's kind, that was kind of a foolish move on her part for sure. To sort of say that she was going to call all those people, because nobody wants to be not in, nobody wants to not be included in that, right? Then you think like, oh, I'm not, what am I, like, so yeah. So what are these, some of the other like mistakes that you see people doing as well, do you think, from a networking
I
standpoint?
was The biggest is really not getting to know the other person. That's the most critical thing. I mean, we talked about like LinkedIn just randomly adding a bunch of people. Like that makes no. I mean, my big pet peeve is people are like, I noticed that we have a bunch of people in common. Let's connect. I'm like, but why?
Right. Yeah.
Like,
Or like, at least mention a specific person, right? Like make it as personalized instead of just like a templated, oh, we know people in common. Like, okay, so what does that do for you? Or,
yeah. I
I don't know
mean,
if you can hear, somebody's playing with the dog squeak right out in front of the door. I don't know if you can hear it. There's like a dog squeak.
I'm surprised my dog hasn't done that yet. It's funny. I've had people personalize it and say, "Hey, so and so said that we should connect," and I was like, "Really? What'd she say? Like, why did she say that?" Right? And so it's obviously like made up because they didn't answer me and whatever. So I'm
Okay.
like, "Okay, you're lying." Like, you know what
Yeah,
I
when
mean?
you don't answer, that's a big like, okay, yeah.
Yeah. But I mean, the biggest thing is like, going to an event and just kind of handing out your business cards and really not getting to know the person, because it's not about you. Like people that do that don't realize that it's not about them. It's not, you should go to an event not expecting to get business, right? You should go to an event to just make friends or, um, just create great connections, or see how you can help them. Um, I think that's the biggest mistake. People are just trying to sell themselves and it backfires. It really, really does.
Yeah, because I think online specifically, obviously you've seen the same thing too, is when people are trying to tell you, like they're trying to sell from the beginning too,
Mhm.
right? It's not about selling at people, it's connecting with people. And I think that the etiquette and the online etiquette, people forget that it's a human being at the
Yeah.
other end. And how would you want to be treated? Would you want to be like, hey, by the way, I got some stuff. Do you want to buy a watch? Like you're like, wait, I'm wearing a watch. You know what I mean? Like, ask me if I own a watch before you try to sell me a watch, sort of thing. Yeah, for sure. Yeah.
I have another story that came up. Somebody on LinkedIn said, um, I had just started this other company, and so I put it on my LinkedIn, and this person messaged me and said, "Oh, there's all these SEO problems with your website, blah blah blah." And I was like, "That's so interesting because I don't have a website." So obviously there's SEO problems. You know what I mean? Like it comes across, it's disingenuous, and like I mean, I've accepted people who I didn't know them, but I can see why they connected with me. You know what I mean? Like I can see what they wrote in their LinkedIn profile. Like maybe they're, the head of this women's organization at their company, and then they've done this and that. And I'm like, okay, I understand why you wanted to connect with me. And I will actually accept some people who don't say anything, because sometimes they're shy, right? But if I see a logic, I'll reach out to them and I'll be like, hey, like I saw that you connected. I love that you did this and that. And actually I've gotten business out of that, believe it or not. So yeah, it's because I've gotten to know those people after, and it's because they might not be so comfortable reaching out, don't exactly know how to do it, right? So I don't fault people who, yeah, as long as there's some strategy behind it, I think it's important.
Yeah, the same thing happened to me where some people reached out and they said something like, "I can help you, your LinkedIn, I can help you optimize your LinkedIn
Yeah.
profile." Like,
Really?
okay, oh my gosh, and you know that it's a bot that is, like, sending it out, and it's like, "Come on." Yeah, those it's, like, ridiculous. Or one that really annoyed me was, it was right after I just published my book, and they said, "Oh, speakers like you, we help get your book published." And I was thinking, like, it's right in my band. My cover is there, like, it's right there. Do your research. But I mean, I think, and that's my sort of pet peeve about those automated bots that will just send messages out. I think, like, we don't go to networking events and then, to your point, like, hand out those business card like ninja stars. We don't just flick them at people and then walk out of the room. We want to, like, tell me a little bit about yourself. And I've had that same situation where some people, impressive people, have sent me a LinkedIn connection request, but then I've started a dialogue with them afterwards, like, let's, pre-COVID, let's get together for a cup of coffee, or let's, I want to get to know your business a little bit better. So
Right.
it is about sort of being open to finding and making new connections, and not just staying within the people that you already know. And I think it's so kind of cool that then, as things start to grow, and when your network starts to grow, you find, like, all these commonalities of people who, I didn't know you knew this person, or I went to high school with this person. And
Don't
it's
you love that? Yeah, yeah, I love it and they'll tell you the backstory of how they met that person, and you're like, really, that's so cool. Yeah, I love that. That always brings up great conversations.
Yeah, 100%, 100%. So like you mentioned on your podcast, like, one of your things is those 6 degrees of separation and narrowing them down. And so you asked me, who would I like to meet? And of course, I couldn't come up with somebody that was clever or different or unique, or other than a celebrity. But,
Yeah.
like, is there anyone that is on your wish list of someone that you want to meet or connect with?
Sure. I've got two.
Okay.
So one's like a typical one. So I would love to meet Keith Ferrazzi. He is the person who wrote Never Eat Alone, which is a book all about networking. He's the one who really taught me all about. I mean, really, it was my business coach, but I had also read his book like years and years ago, and realized the importance of connecting and networking and stuff like that. So he's kind of like the guru when it comes to networking. So I'd love to meet him. The second person, I didn't realize this until recently, but I somebody who came on my podcast, her name's Angela, and she told me a story that I thought was really funny. She um, commented on some post. Somebody was like, "Hey, let's have coffee. We should have virtual coffees." And this was like before COVID. And she was like, "I'm in." And then somebody else by the same name as her name was Angela, said, "Yeah, I'm in too." So Angela talked to the other Angela and said, "Hey, let's meet up. So funny. We're both named Angela." And so they started this group of like all these women named Angela, and they help each other network and connect, and they really support each other. And I was like, that is so cool. So my name's kind of unique, not as unique in Greece. It's not super popular, but it's not unique either. And I was like, I would love to have a group of Despinas who like,
Hey, get
yeah.
to know one. My friend Amy introduced me to her friend Despina.
So you need to connect us.
I'm gonna connect you, or Amy and I will connect you, because yeah, we our friend, and I think Amy, you'll have to put in the chat too, because she works, I think, at one of the Canadian, I think the CBC, I think she works at too. So
Oh,
is it,
that's
or
cool.
maybe she's the wine, she's either, if maybe she's, no, she's the wine, I think she's the wine person. Amy, you'll have to, yeah, so Amy's putting in there, I know a Despina. I know, I was so excited. I told Despina that, Amy. I'm like, I know another Despina too. This
Yeah,
is
so there's actually this other woman. So after that happened, I went on LinkedIn and I just put in the name Despina, and I saw like a bunch of people, right? And there's this one woman, her name's I wrote it down as Despina Spirilioti. And I know, and she's actually the director of marketing of this brand called Cores. I don't know if you ever heard of Cores. Like, they have it at Shoppers Drug Mart. They used to have it at Sephora, and it's this amazing brand from Greece. And whenever I go to Greece, I can get it like super cheap, because here it's like expensive, like really, really expensive. And so I saw that and I was like, oh my God, you have the same name as me. And you're like, you're one of my favorite brands. So I want to like reach out to her at some point. And I also want to meet your friend Despina. That would be awesome. I would love to start that same kind of like this Despina like group.
That's so cool. I think I could just have a group of just Leslie Hugheses, because
Yeah,
there's so many Leslie Hugheses, which I thought was such a unique, like, Leslie wasn't the most common name. I mean, Despina's, even, you probably never found a pencil or something, or like a, license plate with your name on it
yeah.
when you were a kid growing up. I certainly didn't have any with my name growing up on it. But yeah, like just Despina alone would be it's probably really challenging. And so have you ever met other Despinas growing up, other than that one? Or
Not really. My cousin, I mean, it's so funny. I don't know if you know this, but Greek people, but we're always named after our, paternal grandparents. So she has the same first and last name as me.
okay.
But yeah, no, never met any other person. There's a famous singer in Greece who's named Despina, but
And
yeah.
how did you say that the actual pronunciation of it is supposed to be?
The correct pronunciation is Despina. So it's more of like a TH sound. So yeah, it's so funny. That's how I know if somebody comes up to me at a networking event and they say my name properly, I'm like, you're Greek.
Yeah.
It's
Oh,
okay.
that's so cool.
Yeah.
Awesome. I love it. And like the Greek community, as you mentioned, even on your podcast, is so very inclusive. Like, I mean, it's very tight. It's a tight knit community throughout the entire. I grew up in Scarborough, and it seems like, as I think I told you, I know one of the Nick Kiprioses, and there's three of them.
Yeah.
So it's sort of interesting that when you mention one name in the Greek community, they're like, oh yeah, of course I know that person. Another person who I think you probably have connected with, who's a very big network, is Fotini, right?
Oh yes, I know Fotini. Yeah, she's a friend of mine.
Yeah, she only needs to go by one name too.
Yeah, exactly. But the thing is, in Greece, like there's tons of Fotinis, right? Like I have a cousin named Fotini, so it's a
Oh,
common thing. Yeah, but like when you come to Canada, yeah, you don't know other people unless you're part
I've
of the.
never met another Fotini before in my whole life. Yeah. Oh wow, that's really interesting. So,
Mhm.
what are some of your like best tips? That I think we talked a little bit of, like, how if people are nervous about putting themselves out there. I can go ahead and give one tip insofar as, like, back in the, and as we get back into real life networking, the one thing that I tell my students and other people that are reluctant to network, I go early, because most of us will
Yeah,
go late, right, to a networking opportunity, like to a networking event. We'll go late, and then by then everybody's sort of coupled up. So if you go early, people will come up and talk to you. And so, do you have any other tips for
yeah,
people networking?
for sure. I mean, I don't know if you've ever heard of Amy Cuddy, who does the power poses.
Yes.
Yeah, so I that works for me. Might not work for everybody. So
Power
basically,
pose?
yeah, you do the power pose. I've done it. I've gone into the washroom, just before an event and just kind of put my hands up and go, I'm awesome. Just to kind of give yourself like that positive self-talk.
And if
Uh,
there's other people in the washroom, then you're going to definitely make friends that way. You're like, I'm awesome in front of the mirror. I'm awesome. People are like, okay, girl.
Absolutely. Yeah. So do that, listen to like some music that really gets you pumped up, because I think that it puts you in a different mind state, right? I think it's really good. I agree. Arrive early. The best tip I've ever gotten was hang out by the bar, because
Mhm.
anybody who doesn't know anybody, that's where they will hang out, right? So it's a lot easier. I mean, that's where I was when I met that woman who had a client from Procter and Gamble. I hung up at the food table. So that's the easiest place, because people just want to hang on to something, like that makes them feel comfortable. I would say that's really important. I would also beforehand kind of do some preparation work, right? So if there's a hashtag or something like that, search the hashtag, see who's going, and then like I do that whenever I can find out who the audience is. I will like stalk them on LinkedIn and then start like figuring out who these people are and who I want to meet. And then I have like a list of people that I'd love to connect with, right? So, and then I start looking for them at the event. And a lot of times people are so appreciative when you actually go up to them. Um, because they're nervous too, like we talked about, right? So if you see somebody who's on their own, like they're going to be grateful. They're really going to be grateful if you start talking to them, right? I would say if somebody's kind of rude and doesn't want you to get into that conversation, don't don't take it offensively. Like you don't know what's going on in their life at that moment, right? Like maybe they just received like a devastating phone call or like their boss has yelled at them through email or something like that, right? So you don't know. It's not about you. It's about them,
Right.
right? So just because yeah, you're rejected, just move on to the next one. I think it's always good to have an intro too, but be flexible because you got to read the room.
Yeah.
Like sometimes that intro is not going to work, you know, so you got to adjust based on everything that's kind of going on in the room at that point. Don't try to meet like a ton of people. Just maybe, you know, go in with a goal of meeting like one or two people,
Mhm.
and you never know, like something might happen, something might not happen. And if that's all you can take, like leave. After
Right.
you've set your goal, it's okay. But I think a lot of times people will go into an event and they try to meet too many people at once. And I think that that's the worst way to do things because then you'll like, I'm never going to do this ever again. I think you need to be patient too, because that story I was telling you about Procter and Gamble. I mean, that took about a year and a half to actually something come out of it. To come out of it, and it's not like we kept in contact that whole time, right? So
Mhm.
I think people get discouraged because they're like, I went to this event, nobody, you know, wanted to buy my services. So it sucks kind of thing, right? I don't network. And I think people don't realize that like networking isn't just going to an event. Like it's liking people's posts on LinkedIn. Actually, that's something I just thought of. Like if you're about to go to an event and you know all the attendees, maybe like posts that they've talked about, so like get to know your name, right? So they'll be like, oh yeah, you're the person who commented on my post.
Right.
You know, and that starts a conversation. Like get to know who the people in the room are. You know, where do they hang out? What do they eat? Like anything you can possibly find out. And if you're nervous about going to like a really large event, maybe start off small, like just go to a meetup or something like that. Like if you're into knitting, find like a meetup for knitting. You know, people don't think of that as networking, but it is, right? Um,
Mhm.
and I think you just have to keep doing it because it's practice, right? Because um, I wasn't good at it when I first started, you know, like and I think you just need to keep going and
Get out of your own way. Yeah.
stop telling yourself that you're bad at networking because that doesn't mean that you are.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think, as you were sort of saying all this, I was just like, it just popped in my head that really what we're trying to do when we're networking is the same thing that I used to tell my clients when I used to sell advertising space at Wedding Bells and Fashion Magazine, which is like you have to. It's oh gosh, now I'm going to remember what it was, but it's repetition. Like you have to have that repetition of exposure, whether it's online or offline. It's reach and frequency. That's what it was. It's reach and frequency. So how far can you extend your reach? How often can you put your like be top of mind with your network? And really, as most salespeople will do, is connect online and then try to drive conversations offline or the other way around. And it's just that repetition of getting people to realize that if you're coming from a place of service, then you're much more likely to be trustworthy because you're actually doing it for the other person and not doing it for yourself. So I think that all of those things matter because again, we are brands and we have to. I hate using the word advertising because I'm kind of a stickler. I would tell my students there's no such thing as free advertising. Advertising's paid, but really for all intents and purposes, that's what we're doing is advertising ourselves. Like it's marketing and branding. But that's what we're doing, whether we're doing it in person or online. So yeah.
I think it's a great point. And I like what you said about repetition. I mean, somebody told me recently about newsletters, right? And she was saying, um, sometimes newsletters don't get the greatest open rate, but what she was telling me is she said, it doesn't matter. At least your name shows up in their inbox, and so they keep seeing your name. Even if they delete it, eventually they will need it. It doesn't mean that they don't want to see your newsletter. It's just like they've got so much stuff going on that they're just going to press delete, but you're top of mind, right? And that's the point of like liking like LinkedIn posts and genuinely liking, not just liking it for the sake of liking it, right? And commenting and providing some kind of comment. Same thing with Instagram. People know that you're supporting them. And so I think that's really important because people want to feel supported. Like, I don't know about you, but there's got to be some people out there that like you don't necessarily know who they are, but they're constantly liking your posts. I don't know if you have that, but I have that, and I don't remember who these people are, but they're so supportive of me, and I'm like, they're awesome, and I love these people. And eventually, I check out their profile, and I'm like, oh yeah, okay. And when they come up in my feed, I'm always liking their posts. Like, it's all about support and being, gratitude and all that. So
100%. Yeah. And I think one of the other tips that I learned, both through Amy, and also through one of the clients that I had, was introducing mutual people, if you can remember their name and you can remember a little fun fact about them. Like Amy does this so well, as far as far as the events that she has. She's the vice president of operations, and she's like basically she's like one of the first faces people typically see at the front desk, and she'll introduce two people, and she'll say, oh, here's Leslie, and we went to high school together, and here's Despina, and Despina is a realtor, and so there's like two little fun facts, and then these two people connect. And a client of mine does that through LinkedIn as well. So
oh,
he's introducing two people that don't know each other. It's sort of like this is what this person is, and this is what this person is. And here's a little fun fact. And one of the people that he introduced me to, I was terrified because it was the first time I wrote LinkedIn profiles for executives. And it was one of the senior executives at Guardian Life Insurance Company of Canada. So terrified.
yeah.
And when he introduced the person to me, he's like, here is blankety blank. And he, in his non-working time, listens to punk rock music. And I was like, oh my God, it's like the coolest thing that this senior executive was like into like real punk rock. And so I was able to sort of not be so intimidated when I called him on the phone to be like, that's so wild. Like, tell me some of the bands you like. So it just really broke the ice.
I
Um,
love that. I love that. I'm going to use that actually.
yeah, it's a lot of fun if you can remember like an anecdote or something like that, to introduce two people. So
Hmm.
yeah, but yeah, I can't believe it's an hour already. I can't
Oh
believe
my
it's
goodness.
crazy. I knew it was going to be. I knew we have so much to share and so many great insights. So hopefully people took a lot away from our conversation here. So again, so I just want you to tell people, because I know what it is, your podcast. Where can people follow you on your podcast? Connect and Bloom. Where is that?
So you can follow me on all the podcast channels like Apple and all that. It's Connect and Bloom. Same thing on Instagram. It's the Connect and Bloom podcast. And if you want to follow me personally, it's at I am Despina. All the social channels are at I am Despina.
Yeah, at symbol, I am Despina
Yeah.
is your brand, and that is so cool because you are Despina, and well, up until Amy introduced me to you, were the only Despina I knew, but now I know too. So we're gonna get the Despina Club. Uh,
Yeah. And I see Amy has tons of comments. I'd love to meet Amy too.
yeah, oh, Amy's great. Oh my gosh, I'm gonna introduce you guys both on on LinkedIn for sure because well, as she put in Go Lancers, we went to high school together. So we didn't know each other then, but COVID has brought us together as besties now. So I've been fortunate to speak at her events and meet people through all of that stuff too. So yeah, so I'm gonna connect you both for sure.
Good.
Awesome. So thank you again for taking the time to chat with me. And yeah, so I guess we'll chat again soon for sure.
Sounds good. I'm looking forward to it.
Okay, bye now. Bye for now, Desvina.